can be overwhelming. Clearly, I'm overwhelmed right now by patterns. You can either mix way too many patterns, too many colors, and if you mix them all together wrong, you'll end up looking like you're schizophrenic and flossy. But if you do it right, then you'll end up looking like somebody that's just effortlessly chic. Obviously, that's what we want. So today I have 4 tips of how to mix patterns where it looks really beautiful and collected and effortless, but at the same time, still coordinated. First tip is to edit your color palette. So right now there's 95 million colors behind me and we want to get it down to 3 to 4. So my colors today are going to be hot pink, blue with hits of yellow. All the rest I'm going to get rid of. So I've edited down the color palette to 3 colors. Now it's time for tip number 2, which is to mix the scale of the patterns. For instance, these 2 patterns are both large scale patterns and they're fighting with each other, they're competing, and they're too similar to be next to each other. But if you get rid of one of those and instead bring in a smaller scale pattern, then your eye can actually differentiate the 2. I have a bit of a rule that if you can squint your eyes and still see the difference between the 2 patterns, then they're different enough. But if you can't, then they're too similar. For instance, these 2. Very large and in-charge patterns, way too similar, so your eye doesn't know what to look at. They're fighting with each other. Instead, get rid of one of them and bring in a small scale pattern, and obviously these work way better together. So just having a cohesive color palette isn't good enough. You also need to make sure you have the right mix of scales. So now I'm going to take that rule and apply it to all the pillows behind me. Up our scales. We have a large scale floral, a medium scale floral, small scale stripe, medium scale polka dot. Technically we've mixed up our scales, but we have too many patterns, which leads me to tip number 3. Limit the amount of patterns on your sofa to 2 or 3, and in one room 3 to 5. This is too many patterns. What I'm going to do is edit a little bit more, add in some solids instead to give your eye a little bit of a rest. Ooh, very hot pinks. And what's good about these is they have texture, they're not just a solid, so they're quiet, but at the same time adding some sort of depth. Okay, now we're down to 2 patterns, perfect, and 2 solids. But tip number 4 is that you shouldn't have all of your patterns together. Instead, they should be evenly distributed around the room. So right now I have 2 patterns over here, and then over here. Clearly that's a problem because this has just so much more visual weight and this corner is a lot busier. And this can apply to your entire room, by the way, not just a sofa. So I'm going to move one of these patterns over here. So here's what we have, folks. We have a consistent color palette, mixing up scales, only 2 patterns on the sofa, that's perfect. And lastly, we have distributed the patterns evenly, so they're not all clumped in one corner. 4 tips to mixing patterns where it looks effortless, but at the same time coordinated.